Are you a huge fan of the Street Fighter series and want to give Fatal Fury a try? Or maybe you just want to pick up a character that has a really low skill floor but an amazingly high skill ceiling and can be a very tricky character at an advanced level? Then look no further than Ken Masters, the first guest character of Fatal Fury. And in this video I'm gonna explain to you how to play him, explaining his neutral, his up close pressure, his best options for offense and defense, and also how to do combos at the end with a full combo guide. Before we start, if you can like and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content, it means the world. And now let's get into the guide. Okay, so how do we play neutral with Ken in Fatal Fury? Taking into account that he's a Shota character, meaning that he has a really good fireball game and also really good anti-airs and can get full combos out of DPs and anti-air buttons, we should probably take a stance in the neutral in which we try to control space with fireballs and then maybe react to a couple of jump-ins with breakable DPs or your dodge attack that works as an anti-air. It is really important to play a relatively structured neutral with Ken because he doesn't have the best neutral skip tools, he doesn't have moves in which he can teleport or maybe move the entire screen and be plus on block like other characters. So in that sense, Ken doesn't have the most bullshit, quote unquote, to play the neutral in the game. So you kind of have to play relatively honest neutral if you actually want to be solid in your fundamentals. You can of course play like a psycho, we're talking about Ken here, but if you do that in a game like this, you're probably gonna lose 50% of your health just because you whiff a big thing or maybe you did a really neutral on block move. So I would say that play relatively, slow and try to take care of the spacing in the neutral, and then when you have any opportunity to get in, do it, because it's going to be hard to deal with Ken up close. Even if his pressure is not the best, he has everything to open you up on defense, so getting up close is the priority. Another really important thing about Ken's neutral is that he doesn't have the best pokes. Like in this game, there's a ton of characters that are top tier that have immense buttons and that can get conversion out of wild punishes, maybe like with a mid-screen range between the opponent. So Ken can't really do that. He doesn't have buttons that are huge that lead to big things except for his forward heavy kick, but it's not even that big. So as I said earlier and I'm showing in the screen, you kind of had to get the offense going by being on top of your opponent, like right in their face. It is not easy to play the mid-range with Ken because even though you have a good fireball and you have a good anti-airs, you still have to react super fast to jump-ins and you don't have the best buttons to check people. So you need to kind of get on top of your opponent as soon as you can. And now, technically, Ken has a couple of neutral skips, but they are not the best. You can do EX Tatsu in the air, and if it is spaced correctly, it can maybe lead into a full combo actually and also punish fireball users, so it is really good. But it is a little tricky to use. It is not as simple as, for example, doing Born Knuckle, Crack Shoot, and stuff like that from Terry, for example. So in that sense, you have to be careful about using EX Tatsu in the air because it could also lead to you, losing half of your health. And then you also have your run into forward kick, which is Dragon Lash, and this is actually like a grounded full screen neutral skip, but it is minus on block. It doesn't really lead to anything, and it only works as an offensive neutral skip if you maybe caught people in the air because it leads to combos. So it is a little weird to use. I wouldn't use it that much, but if you want to close the gap and be relatively safe because you can't really get like super punished if you do this, you could use this to basically just get on top of the face of your opponent and don't think that much about the neutral. Also try to use the run into heavy kick because it is kind of like a check if people are trying to dash and stuff like that. It's not gonna lead into anything, but it is a good button check in the mid-screen range, and it is kind of the only thing that Ken has, to be honest, to do something like that. So don't sleep on any of Ken's tools. He has a ton of things to do and he can be a relatively tricky character to play and execute. So try to start by doing simple things, play your Shoto, fireball heavy, DP heavy neutral, and then move into doing more advanced stuff so that you learn, and basically have a good time with the character without being too overwhelmed. And now that you understand how to play Ken's neutral, let's move into his up close pressure. And well, when it comes to pressure, Ken doesn't have the best pressure up close because he doesn't follow the rules of this game that well. He doesn't have very plus on block buttons. After a feint, he can do forward heavy punch, feint, and that is gonna give him a +1 on block situation. But he also has a Street Fighter button technically because he has a +2 on block crouching heavy punch. and you don't need to feint. It's just, you can literally loop it, you know, it's gonna be +2, +2. So it is a little weird to play Ken up close. If you are used to the other characters in the roster, you kind of need to change your strategy. You can do like a couple of, you know, of crouching heavy punches and you're gonna be plus a couple of times, or you can do also crouching heavy punch and then do standing heavy punch and then forward heavy punch, which gives you this typical target combo that has that leads into combos, because that actually links naturally. If you hit crouching heavy punch and then do the standing one, it's gonna combo. You need to link it, but it's gonna combo. So it is actually relatively strong. It is not a bad pressure tool at all. And then if the opponent is still blocking, you can do, for example, EX Dragon Lash, which is plus on block. You can also do EX Fireball into EX Dragon Lash, and maybe sometimes do EX Jinrai kicks if they're respecting you a ton, but you need to cancel them at the end into EX Dragon Lash or you're gonna be very minus on block. So that's kind of like Ken's pressure when it comes to frames. And the other thing about Ken that is relevant is that he kind of works like Marco. It is really relevant to do 50-50s on block with this character in this game, I would argue, because he doesn't have the best up close pressure when it comes to numbers. So you kind of have to open people up with basically low-high mix-ups and see if they react to you going low or going high. Even if you don't really have a combo after the overhead, you kind of have to do it if you want to open people up consistently. And of course you need to throw people also, like this is a Shoto character, is Ken on Fatal Fury, and he doesn't have the bullshit that other characters have, so you kind of need to open people up with strike throw. It's not going to be that easy, but when you mix all of this, you know, the plus frame options, then the 50-50 and the throw, it can be overwhelming to deal with Ken up close. So you need to take into account all of these options if you want to play the character at the best level possible. And also, I almost forgot, but use the cross up. Ken has a really good cross up. He can do a light kick in the air and cross you up and then actually connect it into standing heavy punch, the target combo, and then get a full combo. So don't sleep on that. He has a really good cross up. So well, now that you understand Ken's up close pressure, let's get into his combo guide. So okay, before we move into the actual combos with notations and everything, I want to explain some combo theory, because this character, as I said, is a little tricky. And the first thing that you gotta understand is that Ken in this game basically has like Street Fighter 6 routes and Fatal Fury routes. He has both ways of doing combos, and this is technically the most optimal route. Like if you want to get the highest damage possible with this character, you need to do like SF6 combos. You need to do, for example, Jinrai kicks EX into Fireball EX, then do the run into Dragon Lash and Mirrorless because it does a ton of damage, and then finish your combo. But you can also do Fatal Fury routes, and for example, you get your jump in and then you do the EX Jinrai kicks, but you do EX Tatsu after. So you do EX Tatsu, you break it, then you do DP, break it, then for example EX DP, super. And why is this relevant? Because this allows you to do decent damage without losing corner carry, because if you do the mirrorless, you know, version with SF6 route and basically go for Dragon Lash without meter and get a higher damage, you also lose your ability to get people into the corner because you side switch. So it is a little weird, and you need to basically understand this point about Ken's combo theory to see what you want to get out of your combo. Do you want the highest damage possible, or you want your opponent on the corner, and instead you should probably do a more Fatal Fury round if you don't want to side switch, basically. So that is kind of like Ken's combo theory. Now I'm gonna leave you with like combos with notations and everything, but it was relevant to explain this because this is arguably one of the trickiest characters in the game when it comes to combo. So thank you for watching the video. Enjoy the combo guide, like and subscribe if you can, and see you on the next one. Enjoy these combos.